Get your Bibles out and turn to the book of Nehemiah again. Nehemiah chapter number 3. Now recall that Nehemiah had a meeting with the heads of Israel that were there during the time where, again, that Cyrus had sent them on and allowed them and gave them the freedom to start rebuilding. Ezra went 10 years prior and is rebuilding the temple. Now, that would be no small task in itself, but that would require all of his time, and he didn't have time to work on the rest of the city and the walls and all of that. So God raised up Nehemiah to do that. And Nehemiah comes and he surveys the scene and the conditions of everything, and he comes and has a meeting with the leaders and shows them how God has opened the door for him to come and to begin this work and is authorized to do the work. So that inspires and motivates and excites the leaders, and the building starts right away. And we've looked at several. The priests started out the building. Now, of course, they would be busy still building on the temple, but they even pitched in and started helping. Now, they weren't used to manual labor, I'm sure, but they pitched in. And now we see we're down to verse number 8, if you'll go there, chapter 3, verse number 8. All right, we've seen the fish gate done, and now we've moved on past the fish gate and looked at the next group of men. Verse 8 says, "Next unto him repaired Uzziel, the son of Harhaiah, of the goldsmiths." All right, now, what does that tell you? Who would be a goldsmith? What's a goldsmith? Right, he's a jeweler, basically. Okay, like they take their little hammers and flatten out gold and make it into shapes and into things and melt it and all of that. So their work would be dealing with small rocks, wouldn't it? Small jewels and things like that. Now, can you imagine the distinction between these little jewels and these huge stones that they're working with? Now, you talk about not used to manual labor. Those guys wouldn't be used to that kind of labor, would they? They're used to just tick, 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 and tinkering a little bit, and boom, they've got something. But now they're working with huge stones and fixing walls and gates and bars and all that stuff. So here's a big patch of wall that they've come into and began working. And said, "Now next unto him also repaired Hananiah, the son of one of the apothecaries." Now, what's an apothecary? You might know? What's an apothecary? Kinda. It was like the guys that made the oils and the ointments. Okay? The oils and the ointments for various purposes, medicines, for services in the temple, those kind of things. So you can imagine they weren't used to that much manual labor anyway. Now, of course, they would have the heavy bases of oil and all that kind of stuff, but they weren't used to the manual labor either. So here's two groups of people, the apothecaries and the goldsmiths, and they pitched in and began to do this section of wall that they were assigned to. And you stop and think about this, the willingness of the people to work. Now, we're going to see a group of people that aren't willing to work in the next few verses. The nobles didn't want to work. But right now we're seeing these interesting groups of people that have a burden and a desire to build this work. Now you think about it, that's how God does with his churches today. So he burdens people to take up the work, and they do that work, and he rewards them and blesses them for doing that work, and they accomplish great things because they've been motivated by God, inspired by God, and are led by God to do the work. And when you do that, you'll find great things can be done. And there's an example right up here on this table of great things that can be done just by being willing to do the work and allowing God to use you to do the work. So remember that. Don't say, "I can't do it." Say, "What can I do, Lord?" And the Lord will show you what to do. Now, I used to say, "I can't type." I still can't type. You know how I type? 3 fingers. And that's how I type. Okay, I never had a typing lesson. But look what I've typed. Okay? So God can do something with you if you're willing to be used of him. Doesn't matter what your qualifications are. God can give you the equipment you need in your heart, in your life, in your mind, body, soul. He can give you that equipment you need to accomplish great things for him. So remember, it doesn't matter what your occupation is, you can still do things for God that aren't your normal occupation. You can still do great things for God by building walls. And in this case, building churches, financing missionaries, or being a missionary even, and going to places and witnessing for Christ is a work that we're constantly building on. Remember, the church is compared to that has a foundation that's been laid by Christ and the apostles, and we're to build thereupon. And that building is the witnessing and the testifying about what Christ has done for us and seeing others saved. That builds upon that wall. And we continue to build upon that wall, a holy building set apart for God's purposes. And now notice, I want you to see this also, that God took special note and put this in his word. Okay, this isn't just a history, this is God's word. And God has recorded these men's names to honor them for doing this work. And you'll find out that God will bless you for doing his work. Now, it doesn't matter whether you get credit on this earth or not. What matters is that God is taking note that you're doing the work, and that God will reward you for doing that work. It's like going to God and saying, well, God, if you'll do this for me, I'll do this for you. You know, bartering with God. Well, God, if you'll let me do this, and I'll do this. That's not how it works. God will say, you do this, and I'll bless you. And God does bless us when we do his work. All right, so we've got the goldsmiths, and we've got the apothecaries. And I want you to look at that. God took special note and remembered them by taking notes of it in his word. So you never know. God's going to take note of what you're going to do, okay, and what you're doing for him. All right, and then look at the next one. We'll see another group. And next unto them repaired Rephaiah, the son of Hur. Anybody remember? It usually comes on about every Easter. Everybody remember Ben-Hur? Well, that's the son of this guy, Hur. Hur, all right? The son of Hur, the ruler of the half part of Jerusalem. Now, so we got what? He's a ruler of Jerusalem, so what is he? What would you call that person? A politician? Okay, government. So here is the son of a governor, basically. He's ruler of half. The son of a governor, and he's pitched in to do the work. All right? The ruler of half the part of Jerusalem. So they had divided the Jerusalem, the city of Jerusalem, into two. And this is the politician, or the son of the politician, the governor. And he's pitched in to do the work. Now think about that. What do politicians usually do as far as work goes? Yeah, they talk about it. They don't do a whole lot, okay? But here's the son now that's actually pitched in and is doing the work. So the son of her is doing the work, all right? And notice next in verse 10, it says, and next unto them repaired Jedaiah, the son of Harumaph. Oh, that's a good one. Harumaph, even over against his house. And next unto him repaired Hattush, the son of Hashabniah. Boy, there's some good names in here, I tell you. Hashabniah. So here now we have another group of people, and I'll notice this man, and he said that even over against his house. So what was this guy's noted effort? Where was this guy's noted effort at? No, it says next to his house. See that? Some Harumaph, even over against his house. So what's he doing? He's fixing his neighborhood. Okay? He's fixing a wall around his neighborhood, which is no small thing either. He's protecting the loved ones in his community. Okay? And he's doing for his community this work. They're around his house. Now that would imply that he's taking care of his, yes, but he's also taking care of the community around him. And you know, all of us have different communities that we live in. And by doing this work for the community, he's blessing this man and taking note that this man is not just working for himself, but he's working for his entire community around him, as well as for his nation of Israel. So he repairs right there next to the wall. And next unto him repaired Hattush, the son of Hashabniah. Not much is said about that. And then Malchijah, the son of Harim, and Hashub, the son of Pahathmob, repaired the other piece, and the tower of the furnaces. All right? So now we have a tower that's come into play, and this is the tower of the furnaces. What's a furnace? They get heat, okay? These furnaces weren't designed for heat, although they did put out heat. They were designed for what? Yeah, there you go. For blacksmiths, for making of metal, for making of weapons, all that. That's what those furnaces were for. I mean, you could stick your bread close to them and they wouldn't burn up, but you wouldn't want a furnace for an oven, because a furnace would be too hot. But the furnace is designed to take care of the blacksmithing and to making of weapons. And in this case, remember, the blacksmiths would be making the hinges and the door knobs and all those things, the bars and the gates and all those things that would be involved in the making of the gate too. So it would take the furnaces being rebuilt there to make sure that they're functioning properly and to make sure that they're able to make the necessary hardware for these gates. Now you think about what it would take to make a big gate like that. Let's just say the gate would be twice as tall as this back wall here, twice as tall as that, and it would have that shape that would be normally curved at the top like this. So you could imagine the amount of wood and the amount of iron that it would take to hang those gates on those hinges and to have the bars and all that would slide on them. So it would take a great amount of effort by the blacksmiths to make these things. So it would be important for them to get these furnaces restored so that they can, once again, begin the regular practice of making of metal. And you think about making of metal. Have you ever watched a blacksmith work? You ever watch that show on TV where they make what do they call that? Forge of fire, something like that? Boy, you see them guys working on that metal, boy. Whew. That's something I couldn't do. I always wanted to do that, but I said, no, I can't stand being hot like that. Because you standing right there in front of that fire and you're working on that hot metal, man, it's hot in there. And they show many times on those shows that those guys just pass out from the heat because of all them forges going at the same time. So, those blacksmiths had a very hard job, but they love to do their work. I mean, somebody that does work like a goldsmith or an apothecary or a blacksmith, all of them have a specific talent that God's given them to do those things. And that's an interesting point, is that God uses different people and different talents for the purpose of his kingdom. And you'll find blacksmiths are just as important as goldsmiths, okay? Because without the blacksmiths, you wouldn't have the gates. You wouldn't have the bars and the hinges and all those things. Somebody had to make those things, and that was hard work, hard and hot work, but they were willing to do it. So they got the towers of the furnaces built. And then verse 12, we'll stop on verse 12. It says, and next on him repaired Shallum, the son of Halohesh, the ruler of the half part of Jerusalem. Now I want you to see this last statement here. Ash, you might like this. He and his daughters. Okay? I want you to see that. What's that mean? Yeah, all he had was daughters, so what did they do? They helped too. And that was unheard of. But here's God taking note that these ladies, his daughters, pitched in and helped as well. So what does that tell you? It doesn't matter who you are or what you are, God can use you in his service. God can take a lady, God can take a man and do just as important work as everybody. It doesn't have to be sexist or anything like that. Back then it would have been unheard of for the women to do the work. They stayed home and they took care of the kids, they cooked the meals, they cleaned the house, they did all that stuff in addition to the other stuff. But here now, these three daughters, pitch in and do this heavy work. I mean, it was hard, heavy, manual labor they were doing. And they willingly volunteered to do it. And there's a special note here that he and his daughters, this ruler of half the part of Jerusalem, now remember, he and his daughters are doing this work. So here's a governor now, not just the son of a governor, but a governor of the other half of Jerusalem. Him and his daughters are doing this work. Now that's impressive. If you stop and think about it. Here he is. He doesn't have any sons, but he's willing to do the work. And that's unheard of for politicians, willing to do the work. But he was willing to do the work. He didn't have any sons, but he said, my daughters, you can help. And they were willing to help. And God took note of that in his word. So it's special. It's special and interesting to think about how God can use all these various professions and still use you in this manual labor. Now, I've never been very good at laying concrete, but the Lord helped me and Jess Dover and our kids haul wheelbarrows full of concrete over here and pour a foundation for this church. We had to haul it from all the way across the graveyard because the cement truck couldn't get up past the hill there because it had rained. It was damp, and he was sliding, and he was about to hit the roof on the truck of the roof corner here, and he couldn't get around. So he said, "Well, you got it. Where do you want it?" So we had to park him at the graveyard, and we wheelbarrowed 186 wheelbarrows full of cement into this foundation here. Now, I'm not a wheelbarrow man, never have been, but God helped us. And I had a bad back then, but God helped us. Just Dover had a bad back, and all of us had some type of affliction, but God gave us the strength and the ability to do that hard manual labor when we needed to do it. And we didn't suffer consequences for it. It didn't hurt us. God watched over us and helped us keep from getting hurt as we were pouring that cement into this foundation of this church. So God blesses and can use us no matter what your profession is. It doesn't matter if you're a secretary or if you're a telephone lineman or if you're a blacksmith or if you're an engineer. It doesn't matter. God can use you in different ways other than your typical profession, other than your typical work thing. Then God can use you in other ways as well. You can be used in lots of different ways if you'll open yourself up and say, "Lord, what will you have me to do?" And I'll do it. And then he'll give you the tools you need to do it. So here's a list, interesting list of people. We got politicians, goldsmith, apothecaries, and we even got the governor himself in there, pitching it with him and his daughters, doing this work of repairing the wall around their section of the wall. All right. Now we'll get to the next gate, which is the dung gate. That's the next one. So look that up and see what the dung gate is about. Study ahead, and we'll look at that starting, Lord willing, next time. All right, let's stop there. Let's all stand.